Hello and welcome back to the FB podcast. This is Tristan and my co-host Matt. We are today going to be basically predicting slash picking Villa's sort of latest and probably last potentially marquee signing of the summer window. It's going to be a bit more conversational, a bit more chit-chatty. We'll cover transfer news in general, bits here and there, the kit, and hopefully if we have time, we're also going to go over our FPL squads and sort of discuss what the upcoming season is going to look like, I suppose. So yeah, kicking it off, Matt, is there anything on your mind that you wanted to talk about Villa-wise?
Anything on my mind?
Yeah.
Interesting. João Felix is on my mind.
Is he?
Yeah.
Talk to me about João Felix.
Well, we've been linked pretty strongly the last couple of days.
Have we? Sorry, I'm just taking the piss here.
You haven't. Are you trying to? We're supposed to be in this together, mate.
Yeah.
Especially on my team. Yeah, so we've been linked kind of strongly last couple of days. Diaby obviously seems to be moving on, which leaves us potentially a fair bit of money to make a signing and potentially a bit of a gap for a forward player. Felix is someone we've been linked with a million times before. Apparently Emery's a big fan. So yeah, it's been on my mind because it's kind of a funny one. It's not black and white whether this is going to be a good thing or a terrible thing. This could be a Coutinho situation where we've got a player who's like got all the talent, but he's got no actual effectiveness and he's going to cost us loads of money. But he could also have absolutely massive potential if Emery can get the best out of him. So, yeah, Felix is an interesting one.
Yeah, no, certainly. I kind of echo those thoughts. To be fair, I think we've been hearing about this for essentially the last year and a half since Unai has
Almost
actually come
joined.
come in the club. So and the same thing with Nico Williams really, and the way that we keep hearing about them, you'd imagine that should we be big contenders for those players, especially later in the window where teams are perhaps struggling with the finances or just can't quite strike a deal, our persistence and commitment to trying to win those players' signatures might be what wins the day in the end. But to just talk about João Felix a bit, I generally agree. I think from anything more than 45, 50 million, you're taking a big risk, even at that price point, because while his numbers aren't terrible at all, and he's clearly a talented player, he's just so inconsistent. But then again, we've seen that with the likes of Bailey. We've seen that to an extent in periods with Watkins. And as you say, Unai is the king of getting the best out of players. And if anyone can get him to his full potential, he's one of those guys that you would imagine has that ability. It's tough for me. It wouldn't be the way I go, just because if you're going to sign someone on the basis that they're very talented and you've got a manager who can get the best out of them, surely you would rather go for someone who's going to cost you less money, be on lower wages, and already performing to a higher level, right? Or at least similar level that we can improve again, who's already as good as, if not better than João Felix, at least in what they're producing. Never mind sort of prestige and things like that, because that doesn't always necessarily count for everything. Of course, he's come through one of the best academies in the world, and was signed for 130 million. That's always going to add a sort of air of, I don't know, grandeur around him, where it's like he believes he's better, or people have this idea that he's this certain level talent. And I'm not saying he isn't, but let's actually get into the hard facts, I suppose. What is he actually good at? Well, we've seen he is a decent goal scorer. He's been a decent goal scorer wherever he's been. Is he ever going to reach 20 goals a season? No, most likely not.
No.
Especially in a team with Ollie Watkins in it.
Yeah, but he's not an out and out forward, is he?
No,
Or isn't
no.
he's not an out and out striker. Um,
Yeah, he combines in the sense he's a wide forward. He's a bit of a false nine. He can play that second striker position. I think that's really where he came through, and where seeing him in that position is where what got people excited. And the fact that we do,
yeah,
at least last season, did play that position, it does kind of say, well, there is a space for him in this squad should we want to fill it, because we've bought a lot of wingers, pacey wingers, right? And you might say a couple of them could probably play that false nine role, and we are looking ideally probably to get a lot of these players into the team more often than not. But do we have someone who, when it comes to a Champions League quarter-final, semi-final, final even perhaps if we get there, can we bring a player in who is of that absolute level and quality, who's been there before and sits unequivocally in that false nine role above anyone else? And perhaps at that point in the season, we'd have someone like that anyway, just through performance, and you just kind of get an
mm,
idea of who your first 11 is. But that's what kind of position he could fill. Um, yeah, so definitely something to offer this squad. But is it right for the price? Is it right for what else is out there on the market? Probably not. A couple of other things I heard about him. He is a reasonable passer as well. So as you'd expect with someone who's kind of versatile across that forward line, he's not got really any standout strengths. He's a decent goal scorer. He's an all right passer. He sort of gets a lot of touches around the box. So you could perhaps say he's a slightly more direct Jack Grealish in a sense. Um,
yeah,
so
certainly something about that about his play. He's kind of a flair player,
hmm,
um, but he is a bit more direct. Maybe takes a bit less time on the ball than Grealish. There's a lot to like about him as a player when you look at his profile, and this is why he was signed for so much money when he was younger and stuff. Like, there's clearly, I think, in terms of the players we've been linked with and players we can realistically get in terms of like top level potential, I think Felix is probably up there
yeah,
with the highest top level potential player we could realistically get, because he's one of those players who's like had a massive high point in his career when he was really young, and then it's just not quite happened for him. But the talent is still clearly there, and we can still potentially, if we can get the top level out of him, we could potentially have like a massively significant um, and talented player on our hands, and one with a lot of global profile, which I feel like would appeal to the ownership and the marketing side of things. Not that that's why we're making transfers, but there's a lot to like about him as a player.
yeah,
Good numbers for progressive passes. He likes to get on the ball. He's very, very comfortable on the ball, which Emery rates a lot. Takes a lot of shots, which is interesting. Um, Kind of similar to, I think Diaby used to take quite a lot of shots in that role. Like, he was very happy to get the shot off. Maybe would look to shoot more often than pass. So again, fits that role quite well. Um, but yeah, like you said, and the problems come in when you talk about the practicality. Like, in theory, Felix has got loads to like, but the practicality is that he still costs quite a lot of money, even though he's not been really very successful in his last, what, 3 or 4 seasons as a footballer.
yeah. He's
Uh,
kind of been here and there.
yeah, and then he's still going to cost us loads of money for someone who you look at him and you think he's talented, but then he just never quite performs. He just doesn't seem to. I don't know whether it's decision making. It could be like attitude. One of them where he seems to have it all, but then it never quite comes together. He's just not very effective when you actually look at the numbers.
Well, I mean, he at Barcelona, he's had his best year in the last sort of three or four, perhaps you might say. He had 10
That's
goal
true. Yeah,
involvements in the league in what was probably equates to about a 15 to 17 games, like 90s worth of minutes. And so when you look at the numbers like that, you think, okay, that's someone who can produce end product in limited minutes, which might be a role he plays within this Villa side. Maybe he gets more,
true.
but that's a very possession based side. That's a very dominant side in a relatively weak league. So when it comes to the Premier League, we at Chelsea, he obviously didn't have the ideal environment, but again, did he suit the league? Not really. Did he suit the intensity? No. He kind of got left behind a little bit, and a lot of times in games. But there's a player there. We all know there's a player there. So it's just ultimately this one comes down to, does Unai think for the price point he is able to get the very best out of him, and therefore that price is actually worth paying for him?
Mm.
For me, who I would go for over him if I was going to buy someone specifically for that sort of false nine position, I'd look at probably one of three players. So the three players I've got on my list that could play that false nine role, one that the hardest one to get, I'd say Diogo Jota. There's definitely a lot of forwards at Liverpool, and he's certainly not first choice in my opinion, but he does play an important role. He is an absolutely fantastic all-round forward. There's almost nothing he can't do. And the fact that maybe his greatest weakness, you'd say, is his height as a forward, he's actually incredible in the air, which
Yeah.
is something we've only really seen in players like Radamel Falcao and perhaps Chicharito Hernandez, maybe. He's just got so much to his game. He's so effective in and around the box. He makes so few mistakes. He knows he's got such good decision making, and he's never really looked like an inconsistent player. Year on year, he's performed game in, game out, and looked better and better. And now he's still playing this sort of second striker supporting role to Darwin Nunez. Why not a cheeky bid of 50 million when Liverpool are probably not in. I mean, they're certainly not in a bad position financially, but the fact they haven't made many signings would suggest to me that perhaps the hierarchy are looking at profit margins, and that's why they're not spending so much right now. Could we tempt them with a 40 to 50 million pound bid, which would be more than worth it if you ask me for a player that's also so proven in the Premier League?
Yeah, I like the shout. It's an interesting one. He would definitely raise our level immediately. Like he's kind of contrasts João Felix in that he is effective. You look at him and like he doesn't necessarily do anything flashy, but he scores goals. He doesn't start games very often. He comes on as a sub and he always does something, always makes something happen. Very consistent. He would improve us, like I'd have no doubt about that. Would Liverpool be open to selling? Maybe. I think 50 million. They probably would. I don't know if it's a financial thing. I think actually when you look at their squad, they've done quite a good job of building it over the last year or two, and I think
Yeah,
actually they've got quite good quality and depth. So I think maybe the reason they haven't made any signings is maybe like there's a bit of a financial element because they're usually quite smart in that sense. Um, but I think also like their squad is actually pretty good. But yeah, I think they'd probably be open to selling because they wouldn't see him as someone they couldn't replace. My reservation would be spending 50 million on a player who's had injury problems pretty consistently. That would be the thing that would worry me about Jota.
my my what do you call it? I don't know. My not bounce back to that. My counter to that. Sorry, would be that say the numbers I just listed for João Felix, right? It was about 17 games worth of minutes, 17 nineties worth of minutes, and he got 10 goal contributions. That's pretty good. Right? Well, it's very good. For the Liverpool side, Diogo Jota got about 11 games worth of minutes, maybe 12, but he got 13
Yeah, I'm
goal
looking at it now.
involvements,
Yeah,
and he got 3 goals in the Europa League as well. And when you look at his stats in terms of what he's actually doing on the pitch, what is he producing, not just from a top line perspective of ball in the net, but his passing, his dribbling, his positioning. Is he creating shots? Is he creating for his teammates as well? Is he making tackles? Is he making interceptions? He's doing it all. He's doing everything that you could possibly want him to do at a very high level, consistently, all the time. So yes, there's been an injury problem, but it's really only been last year that like sticks out to me as a significant year where he lost a lot of minutes to injuries. Now I haven't looked at the minutes year on year,
well,
so I can't say that for sure.
I think I've always had this perception of him in my head as an injury-prone player, and he moved to Liverpool in 2020. First season, he played 19 games, 12 starts. Second season didn't seem like there was any problem. He played 35 games. Third season, 22 games, 12 starts. Fourth season, 21 games, 14 starts. So there's a pattern of him only actually playing around 20 games a season.
Yeah, I think an element of that though is also Liverpool have had very good players in and around there.
Yeah,
Like for a
there
lot
is
of
a
that
rotation
time,
thing going on.
there
Yeah.
was Firmino at the same time in that squad. and there was always Sadio Mane who always used to come into that position as well.
Let's have a look at his
So
injury history.
there is an element of him not being first choice, and yeah, just looking at those numbers, the defensive work. He's one of those players as well. When we're looking at that centre forward position, that false nine position, you want someone who is going to be incredibly good in tight areas, who can nip into little holes in the box, nip into little areas, play little 1-2 touch passes, things like that, and create opportunities where other players would freeze and panic and probably just turn around and play a back pass, you know. So when we talk about that, the players we've got currently that can do that are maybe to an extent Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins, but not really. That's not really their game. Buendia's got a bit of that, but he's going to do that more
Yeah,
so from a deeper area. Um, is anyone? No one we've really bought screams to me as someone that's going to be able to do that. But perhaps a
no,
little bit Morgan Rogers is like that, but with his size and with his stature, it's not necessarily always going to be his strength. But players like João Felix, players like Diogo Jota, sorry, that's where their strengths lie. And I just think if we keep him relatively fit, what an outstanding player and what a difference he makes.
yeah, I like it. I think terms of in terms of how good of a player he is and how there's almost no risk with the fact that he would improve us as a team. Like you'd have no doubts that he'd get you goals, he'd get goal involvements. Um, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. He's just an extremely effective player.
Yeah.
But I do think his injury. It depends on the price. I don't know if it came out that like because Liverpool got a new manager and like you said,
Mm.
it's all quite quiet on the Liverpool front about who's in favour with the new manager, who's not in favour, who they want to sign. It's like almost nothing's happening, which is kind of weird. Usually, a new manager comes in and there's at least a couple of players that they pinpoint as they're not really in the plans. Um, and yeah, I could see Jota being one of those players because he has always been more of a rotation option. He's never been solidly a starter at Liverpool. So if it came out that they were happy to sell him and we could get him for a little bit of a discount price, like 35, I think it would be worth it because even if he did have injury problems and he played 20 games, like you say, if he plays 20 games but he gets 13 goal involvements, like you're fine with that because we've got good depth anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we wouldn't be like at a loss without him. But
Absolutely.
I think the price, if we were having to pay like top dollar, like 50 million, I think I'm looking at his injury history now. 2020, 21, he missed 24 games with injury. 21, 22 only missed 4 games. 22, 23 he missed 29 games. And 23, 24 he missed 18 games.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah, a
pretty significant.
little bit of consistent injury problem. So yeah, you made me look maybe at sort of more of around 30 million. You might be interested, but up
Yeah, I
at the
think it would be a
40
great
fee,
signing.
yeah.
It's just that's a worry.
Yeah, with
Um,
yeah. So yeah, no. Well, let's leave that there because everyone's quite well aware of Diogo Jota as well. I don't think we're really surprising anyone by saying this guy's a great
no.
player, but perhaps a bit of a out there shout that no one's really considering
Yeah, I don't think people
at this
would
point.
even think of that as a possibility. But yeah, who knows what's going on at Liverpool, man? That's the weird thing about
Yeah,
the Jota thing. It's like he could be out of favour for all we know. It's just nothing's coming out of Liverpool. So.
there we go. All good. Right. So yeah, no, it's a bit weird that Liverpool quite, but we kind of said this might happen because they didn't make many signings. Their ownership are generally conservative in the transfer market. We thought they might wait in the window to see what becomes available and perhaps they might get outcompeted by other big sides. We've seen Arsenal barely do anything so far other than Calafiori looking like he's coming in for about 45, 50 million. What a
Yeah,
signing
that's
that's going to
good
be.
signing that. Yeah,
And they're going to have far more to spend, you'd expect, than that. City still haven't really done much other than Savio, um, off the top of my head. They have sold Sergio Gomez, so they could be in for a big left back, perhaps Alphonso Davies, someone like that. So, but these kind of things. What the main point being is there are big teams in the Premier League with more money than Liverpool that are less conservative than Liverpool in the transfer market that are going to be competing for the same kind of players. So they're going to want to leave a stamp on the market in some way, and if they need more funds to do that and compete, then Diego Jota might be one of those players. But anyway, yeah, done. Sorry, not talking about it anymore. Right. So I did have a couple of other players that I had sort of earmarked for that position. One of them, I think we all know about him. It's not his typical position, but Rafinha, he's been similarly linked to João Felix, perhaps not as long term. He is. I mean, we've all seen him. I don't want to go too much into detail because he's a big player. No one wants to go over the same lines and the same things again. But he's just an all-action in and around the box player. He can do everything in and around the box on both feet. Fantastic numbers this year, both from a top-line delivery and productivity perspective, but also what he's doing under the surface. How much is he actually assisting the team in progressing the ball, in receiving the ball, in taking players on, in setting other players up, in putting other players through, in making tackles and interceptions. He's just such a high level player. Yes, he's not going to go out there and get you 40 goal involvements, but what he is going to do is probably get at least 20 if you give him a full season, and he's going to make your team as a unit perform to a very, very high level with his influence. So if he's available, unlike João Felix, I think if you can get him for 50 million, if you can get him even for 60 million, maybe do it, because he's worth that. He's that good. And if he's available, why not? And on a sort of more interesting note, this is a player I had sort of teased this guy to you prior to the podcast.
Here we go.
Here we go. We have actually been linked to this guy. So Brahan Gruda. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Let's see the spelling.
Okay, I found him. Yeah, it's for Mainz.
Yeah.
I think I looked at this guy on FB Ref.
Yeah, no, you probably did, because we were linked with him.
I did, yeah. I came across him, yeah.
So this guy, the big stat, the one that got you excited and that I was excited about, is when we look across players across Europe, all the big five leagues, every single player compared, when it comes to under 21s, in terms of goal creating and shot creating, more so shot creating actions, this guy for under 21s is sixth, and that might not sound that impressive, but when I list the players ahead of him, it's going to sound incredibly impressive. So ahead of him is Wirtz, it's Saka, it's Elise, it's Doku, and the last one was Xavi Simons. All players in elite territory, playing for the biggest clubs around Europe, and this guy sat there, younger than all of them, putting up similar numbers in a far worse team. Of course, his top line output perhaps isn't as high because he's playing for Mainz. Of course, there might not be the highest performing team out there. They don't have the most of the ball ever, but what he's doing in that team at his age speaks to a very, very high level talent that you put him in the right system with a manager like Unai Emery, and he will explode. So just to go into his numbers a little bit more deeply, 93rd percentile across Europe for shot creating actions. So yes, we talk about who's sixth with under 21s, but when it comes to top five leagues across Europe, he still sits way up there in the top few percentiles, top 7th percentile for actually. And when we say shot creating actions, that's not just passes into certain areas and beating a player and taking a shot. That's setting up players who set up the shot, right? That's secondary actions as well. So he's performing from deeper areas as well, and in those advanced areas where he's receiving the ball high up the pitch and can play that classic winger role. If we look at his ability on the ball in a one-on-one perspective, it gets even better. 98th percentile for all players across Europe in successful take-ons. He is a nightmare when he gets the ball at his feet. And do you know what really, really impresses me as well? Apart from the fact he's great at taking players on, will dribble the ball up the pitch, is the fact that he's got a great shot from range. So you have to step up to this guy. You can't leave him space, because if you leave him too much space, he will just hit it in the top bins. He will just do that. And he is a right.
Quality.
Yeah, and he can play that false nine role, and he can play off the right. So he perfectly fills that position that Diaby played. He wouldn't be anywhere near the cost, anywhere near the wages, far younger, and wouldn't demand the minutes that you perhaps would expect that a João Felix or a Rafinha might. And yeah, you could probably say, well, we need someone with experience to come in and help us in the Champions League. That's correct, of course, but to an extent, we've seen Unai kind of negate that issue with just incredible coaching, great man management. He can bring out the qualities in players that you need, regardless of where they've come from, regardless of the level they've played at before,
Yeah,
because he just knows what he's doing.
yeah. Seems
Um,
like he's astute on the personality side of things. Morgan Rogers plucked him out of the Championship, and he was straight in the first team basically. I think
yeah,
he seems to be good at judging a player's mentality and whether they'd be prepared to make the step up. Yeah, yeah, it's a good shout. It's not exactly a marquee signing.
I mean, I think it would be expensive. I don't know what his. I mean, I'm going to look at his price tag on Transfermarkt. Not that it's the most reliable site ever, but you know, might
Yeah, he
might
seems
as
like
well. He's looking at 20 million plus for this guy.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he is like, if you're making a forward signing and you sign him, you're not signing someone else. So
No.
while he might not be marquee, he will be a significant signing. He will mean we wouldn't sign anyone else in a forward position. And I think very quickly we learned that this guy should be considered a marquee signing. Um,
How much game time would you realistically see him getting?
I think he would probably be between 15 to 20 games across all competitions in his first season. But then again, I say that once we get him on the pitch and we see him play, who knows how many minutes he gets, because
Mm.
this guy could be absolutely exceptional. Um, just a final note on him is that he's actually quite good in the air as well. He's 5'10", so not the smallest guy, not the tallest guy, but he does well
Yeah, I
for his
noticed
height.
that on his stats.
Yeah.
Good aerial stats.
So if you do want to play him in that false nine role and he is getting in the box, he's not going to be just completely useless under a high ball like Diaby was. He has the ability to challenge and
Mm.
does win a decent amount of aerial duels.
I think we
So
were quite one-dimensional
yeah,
in that sense
hmm,
last year with Watkins and Diaby up top. Um, Kind of ruled out the possibility of an aerial ball or like going route one. Because I mean, we like to play direct after we'd won the ball, but I think there was a bit of an issue with. I mean, Watkins is quite good at holding up the ball, but he's not particularly good in the air. Like he's not particularly the kind of guy to win the flick on and then for Diaby to run on behind kind of thing. They never really had that chemistry. So I think um, someone with aerial ability up there would kind of give us another dimension.
yeah, no, it'd be brilliant. And just to say, I got his age wrong. He's actually 20, not 19. He was 20 in the end of May, but
Game
oh
changer,
yeah,
mate. Game changer.
yeah, just to be correct, but yeah. So that's my three for the sort of false nine centre forward position. Of course, we've got João Felix there as well, but we've made our sort of feelings known on that.
So what would you go out of those players? I'll add one to the mix who we've been linked with, Max Bayer.
Yeah, well, he's more of
Um,
your classic number nine, isn't he?
he's a bit more of a straight up forward, but I mean he's not. He's somewhere between a sort of a second striker and an all out forward. He's not quite an Ollie Watkins all out kind of player. I think he could play in the false nine role, and if we were to sign him, that's probably where he'd play. But he's a bit more of a striker than the other players we've mentioned. But he's still got really good numbers for like progressive passes and take-ons. Like I think he does like to kind of pick up the ball deep, drift to wide areas, and take players on. And in terms of actual output, 16 goals in the Bundesliga last year.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he'd be another very good signing. Yeah, out of the players mentioned, what would be your sort of top and your bottom?
Well, are you saying if I was sporting director, who would I sign, or are you
Right.
saying On the
do it
basis that
two
we're
ways.
looking for a marquee signing, who am I signing?
I think if we'll do the realistic one, as in most likely, if we're going to assume that we're going to make one more marquee signing in the window, out of the players we've mentioned so far, most likely, least likely to sign, and then your personal preference and your
Okay,
least favourite.
I think most likely to sign will probably Shao Felix, just given the fact we are negotiating for him. Let's be honest,
Yeah.
it's the most likely. Least likely, I'd probably go Jota. Obviously, one of the bigger players, some injury problems, no rumours, of course, least likely. In terms of who I would actually go and sign, were I the sporting director, oh, you tricky little man. Um,
That's quite tough, isn't
I'm
it?
I'm torn between Gruder and Rafinha because Rafinha's the finished article now. So if we're going marquee signing, Gruder, Rafinha. If we're going, who would I most like to add to the squad for the sake of the club's long-term planning and even potentially this year as well? It's Gruder
Mm,
because I think we're potentially picking up a player who could be worth, you know, not not Vert's levels, but approaching those levels. He could be that kind of level talent come in the next coming years if he gets a move to a big side.
yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on him, won't we?
Well, I
See if
certainly
your
bloody will be.
scouting abilities come true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
fair enough.
right.
I've just looked at Rafinha's FB ref now, and it's completely mad, isn't it? To be fair, like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
would
But I mean,
be
we've all known how
unreal.
good he's been for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Um, I think there may be a bit of competition from the likes of Arsenal, perhaps. Perhaps a Man United if they can move Anthony on. But
yeah. I think if Barcelona were open to the sale, there would be a bit of a flock, wouldn't there?
yeah, well, supposedly they are. Supposedly because they want to sign Nico Williams and they
Mm.
can fill a similar role in the squad. I mean, do we want to move on now to wingers? Um,
Yeah. So, well, I mean, out of the players I've got, they're either forwards or centre backs. To be fair,
yeah, I thought about going
I think
for
they're the
players that are
positions we'll
further
sign
back,
someone.
but in terms of fullback, I think we're settled at fullback. I think we might sell Dean.
Yeah,
I think he might be quite happy to sort of stick with Moreno as long as he's not desperate to leave. Martson's obviously going to start. Cash is, I think, still an underrated player who I'd love to keep. Uh, Nedeljkovic. I mean, let's touch on these. We'll have to touch on the preseason games after we've discussed the transfers as well, because Nedeljkovic,
yeah. He's
Jesus
been
Christ, what a bargain he's been.
popping off, hasn't he?
Oh
Yeah,
my God. He looks
yeah,
every bit of a player Carl Walker is, plus that little extra spice. I can't believe how good he is. I
yeah,
cannot believe it. I
yeah. I
I
mean,
can't. I cannot wait.
when we signed him, City were interested, or he'd been linked to City previously.
Yeah, because he
Um,
played so well against them in the Champions League.
yeah, but yeah, I mean the level he's playing at in pre-season probably exceeded everyone's
Yeah.
expectations. I think he just looks class.
We
He
should,
looks so
yeah,
confident on
we,
the
we
ball.
should caveat it with yes, we played against Warsaw and Spartak
Yeah,
Tirana, right? So
true.
yes, he hasn't played
Yeah,
against the highest level opposition, but what he's done with the ball in the chances he's had, I mean, you can only play what's in front of you, right? And
yeah,
the pace and physicality he's shown, the willingness to cut inside, the like with the ease with which he's done it, his passing range as well. It's just, it's all there. It's all there, and he's 18. He's so quick. He put up just as pretty much as fast sprint speed last season as Mbappe. He is
yeah. I mean,
insane.
I remember people saying when we signed him that was one of his main attributes was his physicality, and you could tell from his he almost runs like Mbappe. Like all I had to go off was YouTube clips and that, but he's got that. He's got like those long legs and that power. And when he gets running, he kind of really opens his stride out really quickly, and he's just so rapid. After a couple of steps is all it takes, and he's just like boom. He's powerful. He's so powerful.
Yeah. But anyway, let's digress. Let's stick to the task. Let's go over, say, some perhaps wingers, right? So we kind of touched on if we were going to go for a centre forward, false nine type player. If we just wanted to sign someone who perhaps if we wanted to play a 4-3-3 in a game in the Champions League, who would come in and be that starting winger that Unai could say, I absolutely trust this man to be able to step up in a Champions League game and win us a game. Number one, clearly Nico Williams. We've been after him since the moment Unai came
Yeah.
through the door. We've not let up in any way, shape, or form in that pursuit at all. Obviously, Barca supposedly leading the charge at the moment to sign him. You can understand why. Are they going to actually achieve it? I mean, without selling someone like Rafinha, probably not. They're still, I think, at least 100 million in the hole. Um,
Yeah, you never know with Barca because they
it's
just seem
yeah,
to. They're one of those clubs that just seems to get away with this financial shit. You know what I mean? It seems like whatever their financial situation, they seem to just make big signings. Um, so yeah, I think like I don't think it would be a financial restriction with them. I think they'd like find a way somehow. Um, I think like in many ways we're arguably better placed to sign Nico Williams than Barca because we've just come off the back of a really good season. We're building a really good strong squad. Emery's been after him forever. Like Nico Williams is going to be aware that in an Emery team he's going to be super important. Um, but yeah, Barcelona's just got that. You know what I mean, Spanish side, so he's not having to trek halfway across the world. They're in the Champions League. In Spain, they've got absolutely massive prestige, obviously, and internationally.
yeah,
Um, so I think Barcelona is going to be really tough competition. And from everything I've read, it seems like they're kind of in pole position. But I still think we're quite well placed as well if we really want to make the challenge, which we will want to, because Emery has been after him forever. Um, yeah, it's still possible, I think, for us, and that would be
yeah,
out of wings, like you say, the obvious choice
yeah.
to just improve us.
Well, rumours are the reason Barcelona are going so hard for him is because they know if they don't get there soon, don't get there quickly, and make a personal agreement with the player, and then try and figure out the other financial package in terms of what they're able to offer to Athletic Club to actually pay the release clause, they're terrified that Premier League clubs are going to come in and take him away, and we are
Mm.
pole position for that. We are the most interested party as things stand. Chelsea have been rumoured, but with the way their finances are going, I'm not talking about it. So it's a very real possibility. It's going to go late into the window, I'm sure of it, but it does leave the door open as someone we could go and sign. I mean, just like we don't really need to touch on the kind of player everyone's seen him at the Euros. Tall,
Yeah,
2-footed
he's
winger, absolutely rapid, eye for goal, incredible at setting other players up as well. His feet are insane. He just kind of has this almost like sort of Iron Man Jarvis in his head that goes, if you wiggle that way, the player will fall on his arse and you'll just glide through like you didn't even have to do anything. It's so fun to watch. And when you I want to put one stat out there that just really kind of epitomizes just the level of talent on this guy across all of Europe, all players, right through anyone you can think of. Goal creating actions per 90, he is sixth. Sixth. And this is
yeah,
including everyone. Kane,
best player in the
Haaland,
world.
De Bruyne, Salah, everyone. He's sixth. Like,
Yeah, he's
he's
unreal. He is
21.
unreal. Yeah, he's so young as well, and that's the thing with him. I mentioned before that he seems to have gone to the next level in the last year or so. When we were first linked with him, you looked at him and you could see all the raw talent, you could see the physicality, you could see the dribbling ability, the directness, but there were kind of holes in his stats in terms of actual output. But in the last year, he's like had his best season. He's just like been arguably the best player at the Euros. Um, yeah, he's gone to the next level now, and he's kind of answered any doubts if there even were any in the first place.
Yeah. He's
Yeah, he's unreal.
you can't say enough about him, really, can you? And there's
Yeah,
no real injury record to speak of. There's just everything to his game. He would be marketable. He would just. I'm not going to shut up. We know how good he is. That's it. Done.
yeah.
Sign him.
Just let him go there.
Of course, we've already spoken about Rafinha. He could easily similarly play those winger roles. Um, the only player I really had on my list, winger wise, well, there is someone that could play wing that on my list, but I'm going to include them as a midfielder because that's really where they should be playing. But my only other winger that again we don't really need to speak too much on because of how close he is to Villa Park at least. Pedro Neto. There's rumours, of course,
Mm,
Spurs have been trying to make that signing.
yeah,
He's not necessarily a classic winger in the sense that he is a little bit more creative than you might expect for someone that is so quick and such a good dribbler. You might expect him to take more shots than he does. But of course, we all know he's a good goal scorer. We've seen it year in, year out. But especially last year, it was more his creative side and his ability to
yeah. He was
assist his
dangerous last
teammates.
year, wasn't he?
Yeah. Whereas you just knew every time he was on the pitch, it didn't really matter how wary a team was going to be of him because ultimately he'd almost always have the beating of his man.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
pretty
Like
much
teams
opens up.
could not handle him at all.
Yeah.
Um, he was, and it gave Wolves. It was kind of Wolves' game plan for a little while. They didn't really even need to have much of a structure and attack. They could just set up defensively well, give the ball to him on the halfway line, and whoever they were against, he just seemed to make it happen. Like he had a run of games where he was properly unstoppable, and he looked really scary.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely loads and loads of talent there. Would probably cost a lot of money because he's high profile Prem player. Bit of an injury record as well, I think. Um, so I think, yeah, for the money, I think, and the injury record kind of thing, and the competition, like we'd be up against Spurs and other big clubs. I think that would be a tricky one, and there'd be a few doubts there. But in terms of talent and ability,
Proven as well.
yeah, very, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, imagine, if we did sign him, if he can replicate that form from Wolves last season, he's like Leon Bailey, but like maybe maybe more dangerous.
Less
He's more
flair,
direct.
more
Really.
direct.
Yeah.
It's hard to say someone's more direct than Leon Bailey, but he kind of is.
Yeah, he's like kind of like a little squirrel. He's just like give him the ball and he's just like so agile, so fast. People just don't know how to deal with him. He's got really good technique on the shot as well. It's not just that he's a dribbler. Like he's got end
Two-footed,
product.
yeah.
Yeah,
Both
yeah, he'd be
wings.
quality, but I think the price and the injury record would be a bit of an issue for me with that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Have you got any players you'd like to put forward?
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't really have any wingers. I mean, Max Bayer has played on the wing. He'd be more of like a sort of a Morgan Rogers, like not really a winger, but like play wide and drift inside kind of player. And again, I think the player you were alluding to earlier was Bania, who can play again not as a winger, but can play wide and drift inside. But he
Hmm.
is more of a midfielder. But then I think if we signed Bania, I don't think we'd be playing him in centre mid. I think we would be playing him kind of where in the role that either Ramsey or Rogers or McGinn had been playing. Like I think more than likely he probably would play in a more wide position than centre midfield.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I
um,
mean, if you want to move on to midfielders at this point, I've got too many. But mine are all attacking midfielders. Really, I haven't got a centre mid per se because I think we're pretty settled there now. We
yeah,
might,
I think there's very very little possibility that we're going to sign another proper centre mid. Is there really?
yeah. They're the only kind of player that I could possibly see a space for is a sort of deep lying playmaker type role where their focus really is like Dougie to just get on the ball, sort of control the tempo, create a sort of structure around the game where we're in control. You can't take the ball off him. That kind of player. But Tielemans kind
Mm.
of fills that role. We've already got him. Is it worth it? Probably not. And just to point out, by the way, I found this out completely by accident. Tielemans, in terms of goal creating actions, is in like the top 20 in, was it Europe or the Premier League? Which just came out of
It's top
nowhere. I
five
was like,
league.
hello? Like, what?
Yeah, it's does seem surprising, but I mean it kind of makes sense.
I can't remember if it was
Seeing
shot creating actions or goal creating actions. I think it was goal creating actions, which, of course, remember, isn't just necessarily shots and the pass to make the goal. It's also the pass to the pass,
yeah,
which is where a lot of that's going to come from. And
yeah,
that says a lot about his game. and his effectiveness in the deep lying areas in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of our better players towards the back end of last season, I think. So it is surprising that he's that high up in the bracket because he kind of doesn't stand out in his playmaking abilities. He's clearly very good at it, but he's not like wow
Yeah,
um, often. But it doesn't surprise me that much because he is a really good passer and he was one of our more creative players on the back end of last season. He got some really good assists, was heavily involved, and he played quite a forward role, didn't he? Which might skew the stats if he's been compared against like proper centre midfielders. He did quite often play behind Watkins in like a proper attacking midfield role. So, but yeah, I mean, it is slightly surprising for sure that he's that high up.
yeah. Well, I can't even remember where was it, the Premier League or Europe? Just having a look now to try and.
I think it was top 5 leagues.
Uh,
I don't know, I could be wrong.
yeah, but anyway, let's touch on midfielders. We probably won't go too in depth, just because out of all the positions, I feel like midfield is probably the least likely to get filled in. But if we sign perhaps a number 10, yeah, sorry, it was 12th in all of Europe for that stat, goal creating actions, which is insane. Players
That is
above
bad.
him, we're talking Cole Palmer, Gordon, Wirtz, Musiala, Leao, Williams, Elise, Brahim Diaz, Diogo Jota, Ousmane Dembele, and Kevin De Bruyne. What the fuck?
Yeah, decent
But
company.
there you go. Turns out when we went mad because we signed him for free, and everyone went, oh, he's not really up to speed. Shut up.
Yeah,
Is basically the answer to that.
yeah,
So yeah, number tens. Let's go through it. I'm going to list my players, and then we can kind of pick and choose who we want to talk about. So I've got Harvey Elliott, incredible passing numbers, incredible assist numbers. Whenever he plays for England under 21s, he absolutely runs the house. It's ridiculous, right? Olmo, we've all seen the level of talent this guy has, the kind of magic he can produce in a moment in tight areas, can unlock any defence on the planet, and we've saw that at the Euros. No, almost no bigger stage he can do it on. Bainer, we talked about him excessively on this channel, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But I suppose we've kind of got a bit of a influx of new audience at the moment. So just to touch on him, he's this sort of advanced midfielder who just seems to receive the ball in great areas and then is a creative monster.
mm,
And not only is he a creative monster, like, because his pass numbers aren't huge, which points to the fact he doesn't play in central midfield. He plays in these advanced areas, not in the box, but at all those areas surrounding the box, in those number 10 kind of areas, whether you're on the left, on the right, or in that zone 14, as they call it. That's where he likes to operate. He doesn't necessarily like to be constantly in build up play. He'll dip in and out and look for chances to progress the ball up the pitch, dribble with the ball up the pitch, and play players in. And that's how he got the most assists in Europe, it's top 5 leagues at least, last year. So super high level talent that we would love to sign. Another midfielder that I want to just quickly touch on is Ryan Cherky. Super, super, super talented. All out baller is all I can say. The only area of his game in an attacking sense that lacks in any way at all is his goal scoring. Everything else he is so good at. He's 2-footed, he's flair, he's 20 years old, he's been around for a while. He wouldn't be excessively expensive because Lyon aren't in the greatest position financially. And let's be honest, like, he's kind of not under the radar, but he's not been talked about so much. There's not a lot of hype around him at the moment.
yeah.
And
That's a good
defensively
shout,
as
that is.
well, he really does like a lot of tackle work for someone who has that kind of profile. It's quite interesting to see that. Yes, his interceptions, blocks, clearances, and things aren't high, but he's a little diminutive attacking midfielder. So just
Yeah,
the fact that he's got high tackle numbers says enough for me. And they're probably a lot of those going to be high up the pitch, so he's going to be great in a press. For me, that for
yeah,
30, if you go out and sign him for 30 million, your number 10, false nine, winger positions have got either incredible cover or a fantastic starter for years to come, for the next 10 years plus. So absolutely worth it, if you ask me. Um, and then my final option for that position, which is a bit more of a budget option, bit of a sort of niche scouting pull from me, is Sergio Arribas from Almeria, former Real Madrid academy player. He's just started to break out in the Liga last season. Very decent numbers. Yes, his overall game probably needs working on, but Almeria, not the biggest of teams, put him in a possession-based side, give him better players around him, especially someone who's come from a Real Madrid system, will probably start to really pick up. He gets a lot of shots in good areas. He's getting a lot of shot creating actions as well. He's a very decent passer and very decent defensively in a press and in those attacking and midfield thirds as well. So if we wanted to go out and sign someone who's not going to demand a ton of minutes and can come in perhaps as a cheap alternative for Buendia if we wanted to move him on, or just depth, he's certainly someone that could provide that.
Yeah, I like that shout. Quite well rounded, it seems. Like his defensive numbers are really good. I don't know whether that's because he plays like maybe a bit more deep than maybe typical sort of attacking midfield role, or maybe that's his role in the team. But nice numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to give you the stage now, Matt, because I've rambled on for too long in this podcast, and
On
we've
the
got
stage.
we've got some opinions. I think really boiling up inside you that you're waiting to spew out all over the screen.
I
So
absolutely haven't. I'm not going to lie. I mean, what you've basically done is just peppered me with about 6 players who I've barely even heard of.
well, you must have
I
some
mean,
players that you've got that you want to discuss.
well, most of my players on my list that we haven't already talked about, I mean, all of them are centre backs, because I think when I'm thinking
Hmm.
marquee signing for Villa, it will be second striker or centre back for me. I think when I look at the squad now, there's quality in every single position. There's depth in almost every single position, and right centre back is the only position that doesn't worry me because Konza will probably play there.
Yeah.
But if we still wanted to play a sort of back three kind of formation in possession and have more of a centre back style player at right back, i.e. Konza, I think Carlos at right centre back is still a little bit of a worry. If we want to maintain the level of kind of top 4 team, competitive in the Champions League, and improve on that, I think Carlos, based on his form last season, looks like a bit of a hole in the team, really. Maybe the only significant gap in the team currently. So I think right centre back is, if it wasn't going to be a striker, I think right centre back is maybe where we'll make a marquee signing. I got 3 names. They're all quite young because I think there's a bit of a trend there. It's Monchi's thing is signing young players.
Yeah.
I'll start with the 2 who I think are probably less likely because they're kind of bigger names. I don't know. I haven't kept up with like who they're linked with and how much they might be going for, but they're big names. Both from the Portuguese league. I feel like you probably know who I'm talking about.
I think, well, I don't know exactly who you suggested, but 3 names have immediately popped into my head.
So I've got Antonio Silva and Diamande.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 huge
So
talents.
yeah, both big names. Everyone knows they're really talented. Both young. Crazy good numbers. Both good on the ball. Strong defensively. They're slightly different players, but they kind of. I think the main thing that Emery looks for in a centre back is the ability to play the ball out from the back really and have composure. I feel like the defensive stuff can almost come secondary to that, and it's that can be taught. Pau Torres as the main example, clearly lacking in his defensive work sometimes, but I think Emery just doesn't really care. Like he'd rather have a centre back who can play the ball. Diamande and Antonio Silva both really good on the ball. Both really solid, but yeah, big names. I don't know how realistic either of them would be. Like I said, I haven't. Have you seen any? Are they linked to people? Because I feel like they're at the age now, and they've played like a couple seasons at high level now, where this is the point where you'd expect them to start going elsewhere.
Yeah. I think the reason we're not perhaps seeing a lot about those 2 is partly because we've had such hype over Lenny Yoro. but also
Mm,
the fact that a lot of big teams already have very high level right-sided centre backs. Like look at Arsenal for example. No one's displacing Saliba in that side. It's just forget
no.
about it. And then Ben White can play there. Tomiyasu can play there. Timber can play there. Calafiori's coming in. Kivior's probably leaving, but they've just stacked in those areas, so they're not going to sign him. City, forget about it. They've got more centre backs than bloody England has population, right? Well, who else have we got? Liverpool. If
Liverpool
Van
look
Dijk
kind of
goes,
set there.
that could be an idea. I mean, they've lost Matip, so now you're looking at Konate, Van Dijk, Kwanzaa, Joe Gomez. Definitely room for another signing in there, especially
Yeah,
on
I
that
don't know
left hand
if
side.
like
But
they'd spend the money on someone that high profile because I think Kanate and Van Dijk would still very much be the starting pair. And like,
mm,
I don't know if they'd go big. I think they'd go for someone a bit more subtle, maybe.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Arsenal, Liverpool, City are all set. Um, I mean,
United are looking at
elsewhere, when you look at
Delict.
like Barcelona, Real Madrid, they're set. Can't see them splashing on a big name like Barcelona have got Arroyo, and I mean Real Madrid. I mean, I could see Real Madrid signing one of those maybe as a player because
Yeah,
going to Real Madrid as a young player, you don't even expect minutes, do you? I think if they went to anywhere else, they'd be like, I want to be playing a significant amount. But at Real Madrid, you kind of just go there anyway, don't you? Just
yeah. I
reason
feel
enough for the
like the
table.
the, the more likely of the players is Diomande, just because he plays at Sporting that don't necessarily tend to demand as high fees as Benfica. I think also the fact that he is a little bit more versatile in being able to play left and right side of the centre back positions, and the fact that there's also Gonzalo Ignacio, who is another player who fits into that bracket. He was the third player that immediately sprung to mind at the Portuguese league of extremely high level young centre backs. He
Mm.
is a bit more of a shining light, and in fact has been linked with Liverpool this summer.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good shout actually. Mm.
so the fact that he has so much hype around him and looks like the more likely sort of target for those big sides, being left-sided, means you could probably, if you were looking to basically go to Sporting and say, look, you don't have to lose him if you sell us him, Diomande might be someone that we could get for perhaps under 40 million.
Mm. Yeah, so you've got them two, which might be slightly unrealistic, but I think if we really wanted to go big on a player in that position, which I wouldn't be surprised if we did, especially a younger player, because we've got Carlos and Konsa who are both quite experienced now in that position. Wouldn't be surprised for us to go in for a kind of a big young player. I mean, and the third player I've got is Dean Huijsen,
Yeah.
um, who we have actually been linked with in the last couple of days quite strongly.
Yeah, I mean, we
Um,
looked with him back when we were discussing the Dougie deal as well.
yeah, yeah, he came up as potentially a part of those discussions. Um, Yeah, so this is the more realistic option, and maybe my favourite option. Just looking at him as a player, and he's a bit younger than both Silva and Diamande, and he's playing in at a higher level. Although,
Well, you say higher level, perhaps at a more established side in a bigger league, but I
yeah,
wouldn't necessarily say a higher level just because those guys will be playing Champions League football and starting week in, week out for those sides. Yes,
yeah,
Portuguese league
true,
not
yeah.
quite as big, but
I guess,
Anyway, I
yeah,
digress.
yeah. He's playing. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's actually a good point. I was going to say maybe there's sort of anticipation and pressure at Juventus, but actually those teams in Portugal are absolutely massive. Um, but yeah, he's a little bit younger, and his numbers in terms of like, well, I mean, progress is mad. 99th.
Yeah,
He's
that's
in the top percentile for that.
yeah. I mean that's probably your. I mean, if you click on that stat, right, it shows you who the highest is, and it's Alessandro Bastoni. I would not be surprised if directly below him is Pau Torres. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you pair them two up, you've got height and physicality, right? Well, at least with Dean Huijsen, you've got a Spanish centre back pairing who are both fantastic on the ball. Why not? He can learn everything he needs to learn off Pau Torres in an attacking sense. And I'm sure Emery, teach him while I'm young, sort of thing. He's 6'5". He's probably going to be at least better than Pau Torres in his ceiling as his actual defensive talent. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, absolutely.
potential. Yeah, yeah. So I really like the look of him. We've been quite strongly linked to him, and I don't think, I mean, from the kind of rumours that have been swirling around, it doesn't seem like he'd be super expensive. Um, because he didn't really have much of a role at Juventus last year. He had a good season at Roma the year before, which was
Yeah,
kind of his breakout season where he was making, he was only made a few appearances, but and then he went to Juventus and he didn't actually have much of a role. And so I don't think he'd be that expensive. And he's only 19. I think he's just turned 19 fairly recently. But yeah,
yeah,
just looking at the purely looking at his talent, because I mean that's what you've got to go off because he hasn't had that many games. But yeah, purely looking at his talent and his profile, there's so much potential for Emery to grow his perfect centre back there. And like
yeah,
you say, with Pau Torres, he can learn that role, that ball playing centre back role. He's also got Konza to learn defensively from. Uh, you mentioned before number one. What was it? Number one tackling. Was it percentage of
Oh,
successful tackles?
Ezri
Was it?
Konsa, yeah, highest tackle success rate in Europe.
Yeah. So yeah, at 19, with fairly few appearances at a top level, like Dean Huijsen can come in quite a cheap signing, and Emery can just mould him into the player, the exact player he wants him to be. So
Yeah, and
yeah, they were my centre back options, and I think
hmm,
it'll either be striker or centre back if we're going to make a kind of a significant signing.
yeah, no, I agree. The reason I didn't go that way was mostly because I just believe if we're going to spend big money, while I would like it to be probably in defence, I just don't think Emery. I don't think he really believes in spending big money on defenders. To be honest,
I know what you
I don't
mean.
know if
Yeah,
he
I know
would
what you
do
mean.
that. I think he's the kind of guy that's like, because of the nature of a defender and how sort of inconclusive their statistics can be at times, at least when it comes from a defensive aspect and a tactical understanding aspect. Um, like you can find really good value in the market, and I think that's the way he sees the game.
Mm,
At least the market current is, maybe fullbacks you might have to spend a little more to get the top talent. When it comes to centre backs, unless someone's extremely standout at a young age in a big side, playing a lot of minutes, you're likely to be able to pick out some decent sort of talents that are going under the radar. Now, Dean Huijsen, is he under the radar? Probably not really, but I think rumored
yeah,
fees sort of 20 to 30 million, and everything
yeah,
I've heard about this guy, just ignoring the statistics, is he's so composed on the ball, has such good match intelligence, and just knows where to be. That's like the kind of statistics that, well, not statistics, but the kind of traits that you see in someone like Mark Gahey, for example, who looked like our best centre back in the Euros. And if he's got that from such an early age, that can only mean positive things for his potential. So 20 to 30 million, if that is the price we'd have to pay, it's probably a bit steep if you look at it on the surface of like, okay, 19-year-old centre back who's played 12 games for Roma, not all of them starts. But
yeah,
when you look at it on a slightly deeper level, it could be more than worth it.
yeah. I think that it's one of them where the potential's there, the talent's there. He's not exactly under the radar, and that's probably why he costs 20, 30 million. Because I mean, like you say, a player who's played 12 games, 20, 30 million, you're thinking that sounds bonkers, but there's clearly an awareness of his talent, which is kind of boosting his price.
Hmm.
Um, but he's not exactly on the radar either. Like he's not like when people think wonder kid centre backs or whatever. He's not really in the conversation. Um, so yeah, I think Huijsen would be super exciting. Um, and there's definitely space. I mean, if we signed Huijsen for 20, 30 million, you could see Carlos moving on potentially. Maybe even keep Carlos for depth, but I don't know whether it would create a bit of a problem with number of players in that
Well,
position.
the thing is with Carlos, right? In certain games, he shines as our best centre back, but then in other games, he looks a little bit exposed, a little bit erratic. And what I've come
He's
to
very erratic.
notice is it's those games where we're getting counter-attacked and there's a lot of space around him, where he's essentially panicking in certain moments where he's in a lot of space and there's either a player in front of him or a player running in behind him that's about to get played in or is about to receive the ball, and he kind of panics and can be in a sort of two minds, if you like. Whereas when we're playing those big teams like Arsenal, like City, like Man United, whoever you want to say, and we perhaps might be stuck in our own box a little bit more, that's where he shines. That's where he's like back against the wall. I know what my job is, and I can execute it to near perfection for a good 70, 80 minutes. Maybe I'll let in one goal. But we saw that against Arsenal. He did it. He looked like our best player on the pitch that day. And we weren't even necessarily in our own box that much. But in a game where we're not stretched that much, and a game where he's got more protection around him, he looks so assured that, like we kind of touched on earlier in the sort of transfer window, for the amount of money we could get for him and the 2 years he's got left on his contract, is he worth selling? Probably not, with that
No,
Champions League experience and the level he can
no.
reach in those big games.
Yeah, I think he's a keep. I think this is why Huijsen kind of makes sense as well, and probably why we linked with him, because if you went a bit bigger in that position, you went for Diamande, say, he would probably be demanding playing time, whereas Huijsen, I think, would be quite happy kind of playing understudy to Konsa. He'd be quite accepting that in bigger games, Carlos is going to be preferred to him just purely on experience. But he's still going to play, FA Cup, EFL Cup, Champions League. He's probably going to be happy not playing. He's probably more happy to play maybe a third centre back type role, whereas Diamande, if he comes in as the third centre back, it's just not going to happen, is it? So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
well, I could see Diamande being happy with that, because things with Diamande, if he can play left and right side, right, Mings still isn't back, and Powell can't play every game. So if he wants to fill in that left-hand side role, he certainly could. And then that right-hand side,
yeah,
if you
that's true.
technically see uh, Carlos as maybe a poor choice against a team where you think the game's going to be quite stretched and there's going to be a lot of back and forth, then you might bring him in anyway, because he's possibly not more mobile, but a little bit more composed in his movement and a little bit sort of perhaps better at making those decisions of when to push, when to drop back, and just not panic so much when he's not got that protection around him. I've not analysed Diamande's game to a level where I could say that for sure, but it certainly seems just off on the surface that could be something he's
Yeah,
capable of.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing with Diamande, is that he has that flexibility, but yeah, I don't know whether with the price he'd cost, I don't know whether we'd bring him into a position which essentially has actually got an outright starter already in Ezri Konsa,
Yeah.
which is why Huijsen maybe makes more sense, and is a bit more intriguing. And I think maybe in terms of potential as well, certainly in terms of ball playing ability, Huijsen is maybe a better player, or at least has the potential to be a better player in that specific role. So anyway, that's the centre back position.
Yeah. Do you have any other players?
That was my list really. I mean, Bainya's on there, who you talked about.
Yeah, briefly.
I kind of my top two, at least, predictions for marquee signings would be Felix and Huijsen. I mean, we have been strongly linked to them, so maybe it's a bit of a cop out. But I think
Yeah.
Felix is a player who Emery clearly wants, so I could see that happening all day. Huijsen makes sense in terms of the profile of player and how he'd fit into the squad. There wouldn't be any problems with playing time or whatever.
All right, we're back. Few internet issues there. I think we just about ended on our marquee signings talk just before we were about to go into some Villa transfer rumours. Not too many new things to touch on. We kind of already covered most of the stuff that's been talked about in reasonable depth, but some new ones come out in recent days. So big news that we want to touch on. James Rodriguez just linked today Lots of outlets reporting that he's been offered to us. Now, do you know what? This comes down to money for me. That's all it's about. Because if he came in for free on less than 100k a week, I take him like that for a year or 2 years maybe, preferably probably 1 year. I'd take him
Yeah, year with
straight up.
extension, something like that.
Yeah, because he does put him on the pitch, right? Does virtually nothing other than create wonders. When you look at his stats, he is just progressive passes, completion, passes attempted, assists, shot creating actions, just as good as he's always been. I mean, we all know James Rodriguez. I mean, like, I don't need to tell you all about James Rodriguez, but just the level of passing and creativity he has is that kind of player that could slot in anywhere in that sort of forward area and provide for everyone around him. He doesn't have to be the main man. He doesn't have to play a ton of minutes. Perhaps you just play him in those big Champions League games. Whatever it is, he can come in and he can do a job. He just won Player of the Tournament at the Copa America, I'm pretty sure. So,
Yeah,
if I think he did, yeah. If it wasn't Player of the Tournament, he easily got the most goal involvements of anyone in the competition, if I remember correctly. He absolutely shone, and I don't even know
yeah,
where
because
he's
Colombia
playing
got to the
now.
final, didn't they?
Um, I think so. I really don't know. I didn't
Yeah,
pay too much attention.
Argentina beat Colombia in the final.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so he's not played too many games last year. He's worth virtually nothing at this point, and so if you can pick him up for a cheap fee, and it means we can spend big money on a centre back, then absolutely, why not? The magic he's produced over the years, the level he's
Yeah,
still able to reach in tournament football, which is
can't believe
exactly
he's
what we need him
33, man.
for. I know, right? Seems only like 5 years ago he was in his early 20s scoring
Yeah, like I
Pushkas
remember his
forward goals.
breakout World Cup, and it didn't seem that long ago. That.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? We're old
Yeah,
now.
I kind of like it. It's kind of like out of the blue, pretty wild for us to be linked with him. But like, he's just got
Reminds
the
me of
magic touch,
Ericsson to
hasn't he?
United.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Player who's kind of been. I mean, Ericsson was out of the game for like the bizarre health issue thing, wasn't he? But
Yeah,
like, player who's been off completely off the radar, and you think he's kind of done, but they've still got the technical ability. And he's obviously super technically talented. Though I think there'd be concerns about how high his level could get to again. Um, but it's kind of I feel like it's always useful to have that proper veteran in the side, isn't it? Someone
yeah.
who's been at Real Madrid, who's been at like the biggest club in the world. Um, I feel like it's always valuable, even if he barely plays, even if he plays like 10 minutes at the end of the occasional Premier League game, or he plays, a half here and there or whatever. He's got the technical ability. I think he's still got the technical ability to probably make an impact, or at least, I mean, you'd hope so because we're not going to sign him otherwise.
Yeah.
Uh, but even just having the player who has got the experience of being at the absolute top level, considering this is our first year in the Champions League for ever, basically, and I mean, who out of our squad have played at that level? Very few players.
Leon Bailey possibly at Bayer Leverkusen.
Maybe, yeah.
Anana at Lille, I think. Tielemans a little bit.
Tielemans, yeah.
Anderlecht and Leicester. Kamara at Marseille. I don't know if Barkley probably played some minutes in the squads he's been in.
Probably.
Who else have we got in there? McGinn won't have done.
Torres.
Torres, yeah, might have played some. Definitely did play some minutes in the Champions
Yeah,
League
Torres got to the
semi-final run.
semi-final. Yeah.
Yeah, Carlos for
Um,
Sevilla. So there's reasonable amount, but there's not
isn't
like
it's not
verified
like
winners.
no, and it's not top level either. It's like most of the time they're not getting out of the group stage. Whereas nobody's played at the level that James Rodriguez has played, with the pressure that James Rodriguez has played at with Real Madrid and Bayern Munich.
Well,
Um,
I'd say Emi Martinez, you could probably say at this point, is a
yeah,
verified
to be
winner.
fair, internationally, yeah.
Yeah, won 3 European
Um,
competitions that he's played in a row. So,
yeah, what a
sorry,
baller.
did I say European international?
You did
Oh
say
God,
European, yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah,
That's
definitely
his future
European.
trajectory. That's you're predicting the future there. Three European competitions in a row.
Yeah, let's just hope they're all Champions
Um,
Leagues, not Conference Leagues.
yeah. Yeah, so I think there could be value in it if, like, I mean, it would be presumably a free transfer. I don't think he'd demand that much wage because he's playing like we said, he's kind of like he's gone off the radar of top level football now. So I don't think he could really realistically demand that high of a wage.
Hmm.
So yeah, for signing it that basically cost you nothing, I think even just having that kind of proper veteran who's been there and done it would be valuable. I think it's just that you just worry about what level he can realistically reach. But like you say, if he's been performing in the Copa America, got to the final with Colombia, I mean that's a high level competition, right?
Yeah,
He won't be able to do it week in week out because he's like 33 now and he's not playing at that sort of super intense high level. But for a kind of player who's going to make have a bit part role and make appearances here and there, could be like could be a could be a very astute signing, I think.
yeah, potentially. So the other players we wanted to
Go on.
touch on, I think I'll let you take the lead on. Is it Assignon?
Yeah, Assignon. So I haven't even seen these links. So we've been linked with him, have we?
Yeah, it's just a couple of leaks in the last couple of days. I believe he was loaned out to Burnley, and I think
Yeah,
Roma are trying to sign him, or is he at Roma? I haven't
he plays
really
for
looked into
Rennes.
this too
He
much.
was loaned to Burnley.
Yeah,
Um, made 15 appearances for Burnley last season. I don't even remember him being there. Like,
well, he
I
played 1,200 minutes, played 15 games, got one
I
goal
think
and
I
two
just got fed up of
assists.
watching Burnley, to be fair.
Yeah, no, everyone did, and that's why people also probably underrating the Muric signing. Is it Ipswich that signed him, the
Oh yeah,
goalkeeper?
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
was actually, in terms of like goals prevented from sort of shots on target stat. I can't remember the shots on target, whatever you want to call it. He was up there above Emi Martinez, who was, I think, third or fourth in the league last year for that stat, and he was only there for half the season. Like that's
Yeah,
insane.
that is mad. Yeah,
Um, so like people missed out on Burnley. Like, they didn't have a good end to the campaign. They didn't have a good any part to the campaign. But
no,
what we can say is they definitely improved in the second half, and I think Lorenz Assignon certainly was part of that. If you ask me.
yeah. Well, he's just very solid in kind of um, every element of his game. He's just very well rounded. He's good on the ball, which Emery requires from his defenders. He's got a bit of Matty Cash about him when you watch him play. Um, like he's very comfortable getting forward. He doesn't mind going around the outside or cutting into the box. He's kind of comfortable in around the box. Like he's a good dribbler. He's just like he's just a very solid player. He's 24. Um, presumably would cost us barely anything because he's been at
The
Rennes
rumours are
and
eight
then
million.
been to
Yeah,
Burnley. So it's not going to be as a depth signing. Would just be very solid, I think, and would tick all the boxes in terms of what Emery requires from a player. The only
yeah,
thing is we don't really need a player in that position, do we?
yeah.
Um, which, if we're being linked with him, makes you think that maybe someone's on the move, which would probably be Cash. Maybe if we were looking at because I mean Monchi's very astute
Dean,
at well,
he's
I
left
wouldn't
back,
put
right?
it past us to
Is
sell
he not?
Cash.
Is he a right back or is he a left back? I thought he
Assignon,
was a
yeah, he's a
left
right
back.
back. No,
Oh,
he's
I
a
thought he
right
was
back.
a left back.
No.
Shows how much I know. Um, okay, yeah, okay, okay, yeah, maybe,
I
but
mean, uh,
uh,
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a right back, but
I don't know. Yeah, fair
um,
enough. I'm not trying to be the authority on this. If he's a right back, he's a right back. Fair enough. No, I just didn't know. So I assumed he was a left back. Okay, that is
I think,
interesting.
I mean, looking at like the players he's compared with on FB Ref, there are left backs there, and he does like to cut in from right back. So I think that there's the possibility for him to play as an inverted left back for sure, and he may well have played there. Um, but he's predominantly a right back as far as I can tell.
I see.
So yeah, the fact that we're linked with him makes me think that there's somebody's being sold in that position. I was thinking actually earlier that I was looking at the pictures of all the players boarding the plane for the USA pre-season tour, and Kesler Hayden was on there, and I was thinking, is he going to have a role this season? Could be a sale for.
He really could. I mean, when we've seen those pre-season games, the first one he was neither here nor there, but that second game, he really looked very comfortable. Like his touch was great. He was getting in great positions, and he was playing on the right wing as well. So he wasn't playing right back. He had Matty Cash behind him, which kind of speaks to how Emery rates his ability going forward as well, to play them that way round.
Yeah, that's mad.
So very interesting way to play him, especially with all the wingers available in the squad to play, and he's playing Kesler Hayden out there. That's interesting. Whether that's maybe putting him in the shop window, I don't know, but he certainly did not look out of place in that side.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is that it's getting him ready for a sale, really, giving him plenty of game time so that people can other clubs can evaluate him as a player. And because we saw it last season with Philogene, where he played all of pre-season, then we sold him on, and Kesler Hayden would be, for PSR purposes, would be a good smart sale. So maybe that's why we're looking at Assignon, who's a player who'd come in, he'd be cheap, he'd be very solid, and he'd be happy to be back up to Cash or Nedeljkovic. And like I said, I wouldn't put it past us to sell Cash either, if it was just a case of, because Monchi's very, very astute on the financial side, and it's like Cash would make sense as a sale in terms of he's probably at the moment in his career now where his value is as high as it's going to be, unless he has like a mad season next year, which I wouldn't put it past him to do, but he's probably at the peak of his value now. So
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for Cash
is sale there.
Sorry, yeah. I think the biggest thing for Cash this year is, well, in the summer transfer window, is Cash. Like, is anyone going to put up the 30 to 40 million euros that we want for him? It's been widely reported what we're asking for him. No one as of yet wants to. And two, I think it's going to be his confidence, because I think the year he's just had, while there have been moments, of course, where he's not had perhaps the best concentration, and we've touched on that a number of times over the last few months, he delivered in a lot of big moments. And I think just having that year where he's played at that level and got Champions League and played in Europe, especially essentially scoring all but the winner against Lille, that'll boost his confidence massively. And we could see him take another step up, because every year we've had him, we've seen him take a step up. So I wouldn't put it against him, hold it against him, whatever the phrase is, to do it again this year. Put it past him, that's it. I wouldn't put it past him to do it again this year. So, yeah, no, it's an interesting rumour, interesting signing, good for the price, good age profile, low wages. Wouldn't say no at all, but just as long as we're getting good money for whoever we're bringing in selling in replacement, or as long as everyone's getting decent game time. That's all I'd say really about that one. Final one,
isn't it?
Yeah. But final rumour to touch on is Semi Kilishoy. This guy's been going on really all of summer, and apparently we've made some sort of improved bid around 25 million euros for him. That was widely reported as the asking price by Besiktas. So if that is true, this could be one of those that kind of pops up out of nowhere, where we actually end up signing him, and we're kind of like, Danny Ings, what? So it could. Oh Jesus, that was a big wobble. It could be one of those where he comes in and no one really knows. And to be honest, this is a really interesting profile. We don't see too many players like this anymore. He often gets compared to Sergio Aguero because he has this, even though he's 5'10", he has this strange, really low center of gravity where it just seems like when he gets moving with the ball, when he wants to turn, when he wants to cut inside, when he wants to stop, take a shot, he's so close to the ball in this. I don't know how to describe it. It's like he can just see those little gaps, and he can make those. He can put the ball through that gap. He can turn on a sixpence and shoot into the top bins with like that tiny little gap between two players, kind of like Aguero used to do. And he's
Yeah, I like the
two-footed as
Aguero
well.
comparison.
Yeah, he's two-footed. He's a big poacher, but also he can play on the wing, and that's what's so interesting about him. Is you think of Aguero and you're like, okay, he wasn't rapid, but he was fairly quick, very good at both feet. He was very good ball control, very good dribbler, and really mostly a poacher. But you would never put him out on the wing. Whereas this guy would look just as comfortable out on the left wing, dribbling past players, cutting inside, making crosses, passing it across the 6 yard box, etc., etc. So the fact that he is compared, he can play both those positions and he's getting these kind of comparisons. Of course, comparisons are a bit lazy sometimes in football because every year we hear about the next three Lionel Messi's and things. But it does speak to his kind of skill set and his profile. And if Unai Emery identifies him as a high level talent, I don't see why not. He's got the output for sure. I think it's 11 goals and 3 assists in his maiden Turkish League campaign at
Yeah,
18 years
good
old.
numbers. Yeah,
That's
very
like
good
for an
numbers.
18-year-old in any European league, it's almost unheard of for a striker. So, I mean, if Emery wants him, I'm all in on him.
Yeah, I like this one. I think
Yeah.
out of the kind of random rumours that we've just talked about, has the most potential in terms of the quality of player. I mean, yeah, 11 goals in 20 odd games at Besiktas, which is a big club. Like even to get himself in the squad at a club like that at 18 is impressive. Um, like you say, yeah, unique, clearly just massively, yeah, talented. I don't know what I think I'd see him in the second striker role. Would you at Villa?
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make
Yeah,
sense.
I
I
think
mean,
he's got a role to come into,
yeah,
um, and so it kind of it's not out of the blue that we'd be interested in him. Like you say, the rumors have been swirling around for quite a long time. Yeah, this would be the most exciting out of the rumors, and if we went for him instead of João Felix, and then we could spread the money a bit more evenly, like use some of those funds rather than spending 50 million on Felix, spend 25 on Kilishoy, and then you've got a bit of extra to like invest in a centre back or whatever.
mm,
It kind of makes more sense practically.
yeah. I think he
Um,
very much sits in a similar kind of area in terms of the squad and his ability and his potential as Gruder. I'm probably saying that completely wrong, but so let's just pretend that's his name. Let's call him Gruder.
yeah, no,
Um,
yeah, I
yeah.
think they're kind of similar. Well, similar ages, similarly kind of breaking out, um, and yeah, similar role.
Slightly different profile, but I mean those two together. This is the joys of summer transfer window. Is that you sit there as a fan and you go, oh, that player and that player together. Oh, what could they
Yeah,
do? You do it
anything
every
could
year,
happen.
and I mean maybe it could be amazing, but ultimately what we're just saying is if we sign those players and if they were to fulfill their potential, magic, magic, magic is all we can say. So yeah. Anyway, any other rumours to touch on, or I think we probably don't have time now, realistically, to do FPL. We'll be
Yeah,
losing eyeballs.
we can do a dedicated FPL one. We can spend a bit more time on an FPL episode at some point.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've covered the rumours, but we've got confirmation that Diaby has gone to Al
Oh, have
Ittihad
we?
now. Yeah,
Oh,
done.
that's a great bit of clickbait there. Just right at the end of the podcast, we just get the news, title it, Moussa
Yeah, yeah,
Diaby's Al Ittihad confirmed
yeah,
reaction. You watch an hour and a half in, and you're like, where is it?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So
to be fair, I can work it into the title because we are essentially looking for a marquee signing based on the fact that he's going to go.
I mean, yeah, we had
So,
that most of the discussion has been around his position, really, hasn't it? And yeah, confirmed that he's gone. My initial feeling is like just a bit gutted, really, because I think it was such an exciting signing. He started the season so well, ended it a little bit disappointingly, maybe, but you still see the massive potential there.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's we've made a profit on a player in a year. You know, we've made like what, £15 million profit or whatever, and then with amortization or whatever, it kind of just made sense if they were willing to pay that money for him. But bit
Yeah,
gutting, I reckon.
yeah. What's really interesting for me is going to be how much of those add-ons had we paid by the time he went, because I think the initial fee ended up being about 34.6. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
we
true.
didn't
Yeah,
activate too many of those add-ons, we could be looking at upwards of 10 million profit here, which is pretty good. Like,
yeah.
it could be like 15 mil profit.
You just can't really complain when someone comes in for a player you bought a year ago and they're already offering a decent amount more than you paid for them. And I
Mm.
think he's not in the bracket of like irreplaceable at the club, is he? You've got Watkins, Martinez, probably Leon Bailey, McGinn. You've got these players who are like really, really integral, and you think if we lose them, we're gonna find it hard to replace either that player or that personality. Whereas Diaby, he hadn't quite got himself into that bracket. I think he is going to be hard to replace because he was at his best. He was like a top level player, and he wasn't at his best for a lot of last season. And he got what, like 20 goal involvements in all
20 goal
competitions.
involvements in 50 odd
So
games, yeah. A lot of
he's
those from
still
the bench
like
as well.
had a good season, really.
Mm.
So I think his quality will be hard to replace for sure. But yeah, at the same time, he's not irreplaceable. And I think, you know, we've now got 60 million to play with. Like, that's the thing with João Felix, is that, I mean, I don't really like swapping Diaby for João Felix, but Emery's been after Felix forever, and Emery's probably thinking, if they're willing to pay this money for Diaby, this gives me the money to get a player that I've always wanted. And in that case, it kind of makes sense. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I suppose we should touch on Diaby a bit more deeply at the end of the. Now we've got the confirmed news, extend the pod a bit, because I did say as well I was going to touch on him on the pod and give my full opinion. And that is, in terms of this move, I'd probably say I'm 65% against, 35% for. 65% against because, as we say, great numbers and the amount of minutes he played. And at times, he looked in the start of the season like a fantastic goal scorer. Then at times, he looked like a fantastic creator towards the end of the season. He really started to seem like he was starting to get it in those sort of final 10, 15 games. I mean, that goal against Olympiacos in the semi-final as well was. I mean,
yeah,
I
true.
know
He
it
did.
wasn't like the most amazing finish ever, but just the nature of the goal, the context of it, where he scored it on the pitch, it's so hard to do, and he just made it look so easy out of nowhere. Like, he really did have great numbers, and especially one stat that I heard someone. I think it was. You ever heard of AVFC Scout?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
don't know what his name is. I saw him appear on a podcast, and he came up with this stat, which was essentially shot creating actions per touch to sort of make it relevant to how much they're actually on the ball, because of course different
Yeah,
teams and different players spend different amount of times on the ball. And in terms of that stat across, I don't know if it was across Europe or across the Premier League, but he was supposedly right up there for that stat. So how effective he actually was in the time that he was on the ball while we actually played him was way up there. So that these are the things that hold me back and say, look, 25-year-old who we bought for, you know, potentially 50 million has super, super high potential. You know, you give him one season where he starts, say, more games than Leon Bailey and gets maybe 10 plus goals, 10 assists. All of a sudden, you're probably looking at upwards of £70 million, £80 million, not the 60 million euros that we have got for him. I mean, to be honest, what that probably says more than anything is that Unai and Monchi are so sure that they can improve this squad with that money that they're willing to take a lot less than they could have got for him
yeah,
had they wanted to achieve that price, because they're so sure of what they can do with that money that, and they're so certain of what they can achieve in the market with that money, that they were willing to forego that profit and forego that amount of money.
yeah, yeah. You've just got to trust that, haven't you? Because
Mm.
if Diaby had shown enough to the coaching staff and to the manager that he was like absolutely essential, and he offered something that they were not going to be able to go and get somewhere else, then we wouldn't be willing to sell him, and we would, like you say, only sell him for like 80, 90 million pounds. But clearly he was in a bracket with the coaching staff where, yeah, they could take 60 million for him because um, they feel like they can do more with that money than he actually offers.
Yeah,
Um, which I do kind of see, like that's the kind of thing that eases the pain of it going, because you're seeing a really quality player leave, but at the same time, it does feel like with that money, I trust Unai to go and get a player who will perform better. So
yeah. And what I wonder as well, does this potentially put us net positive in terms of player sales and player transfers? I'm not sure. I'm not certain on that at all. But I mean, maybe it could. And if
might
it
do for
does,
now. I'm pretty sure we'll slip out of it quite quickly based on
yeah.
like the
But I mean,
ridiculous rumours.
yeah, the level of sort of spending we've had in other seasons. I mean, it would make sense that we spend more. Everyone usually spends more on transfers than they make, apart
Yeah,
from perhaps Brighton, which
yeah,
their profit from player sales. I don't even know. It's like if you looked at it on a graph, it would be like top six clubs, mid-table clubs, lower table clubs, and then you just got Brighton all the way up there. You can't even see them. It's like when you look at Man City on that play style graph that Opta have. It's
yeah,
like you've kind of got a bunch of
yeah,
relegation teams over here, and slowly you work up the league, and you get different styles, a little bit of variation, and then way down here playing super super slow and so many passes per sequence. You've got City, who are just a complete beast of their own. So yeah. Anyway, weird caveat to go on. I think. I mean, unless you've got anything else to say about Moussa Diaby, I think we end it there.
yeah. I think that's pretty much it. A bit gutting to see him go, but let's trust in Unai to go and get someone who's going to blow us away. That's what's going to happen, I reckon.
Yeah. So yeah. Final note, Moussa. Good luck. Thanks for your service, Unai. We trust. And to everyone else, yeah. See you next week, I guess.